So now we come to the last process of French polishing, which is the spiriting off. It's probably the part that most people find the hardest, but you shouldn't be too afraid of it. You'll need a spirit rubber. Now a new spirit rubber with fresh wadding is useless to you because it's far too absorbent, so I suggest you take the rubber you've been using for your bodying, wash it out thoroughly and leave it in a jar for a couple of days with the lid just loosely on so as the spirits can evaporate. Then to charge it, we just need a few drops of spirit. There we go. It shouldn't be dry when you take it out of the jar. It should be cold but not wet. Just might feel a little bit moist. Spread the spirit into the wadding like so. So once you've turned your bodying rubber into a spirit rubber, it should then be put aside and only used for that. Next time you do this, you'll need a new bodying rubber, which is not so difficult to use. Now, because it's very volatile, because it's only got spirits in it, we need to start by just literally feathering the surface. So I'm not pushing at all, I'm just letting the rubber just glide across the surface. It's picking up some of the oil that remains on the surface from the last time we did bodying. And it's just sliding on top of the surface. Eventually it's going to become very sticky, at which time we'll need to increase our pressure so as we don't tear the surface too much. So we're just going to continue doing this until it becomes sticky, which will happen relatively quickly. When it does, we'll need to start pushing harder. You'll feel it start to stick and grab the surface. At that point, the only thing you can do to the surface is damage it. If it's gripping it, then you will tear it. So we can't use oil anymore because the idea of this is to remove any oil and things that may be on the surface. So all we can really do to stop it sticking is to push harder and maybe move the rubber faster. So what we're doing now is saying, I'm not going to let it stick. I'm just going to keep pushing harder and harder and harder so as it won't stick. It can be quite exhausting when you're pushing so hard, so don't be afraid to stop to take a breath of air. Off we go again. There is more use polishing it across the surface rather than with it, across the grain that is, rather than with the grain, as it's going to have the tendency to flatten it. The whole process shouldn't take very many minutes, as it's only a very small item. The old polishers, when they were doing maybe a large dining room table or such an item as that, would put 2 or 3 or 4 even cloths on their rubber, and as one started to dry they'd remove it, meaning the one underneath was a little damper, and they continue like that. In practice the guitar is far too small an item to do that on. So if things don't go entirely to plan, unlike with the bodying, there's no reason why we shouldn't recharge the rubber with a few more drops of spirit, but I implore you to remember it's only a few drops. If this rubber is too wet with spirit, all it can possibly do is damage the surface. So it's starting to come up now. So the surface is starting to come up now. We've removed most of the oil, if not all of it. So I'll just have a quick look at the surface. Yeah, it's coming up nicely now. So it won't take very much longer. And then, as with the bodying process, we must finish by going straight up and down the grain. Now the rubber is not sticking anymore. We've got to the stage where most of the, or a lot of the spirits have in fact evaporated from the rubber, so we can ease off our pressure because it isn't sticking, and therefore we don't have to push so hard. It still feels cold, it doesn't feel wet, and that's precisely how it should be now. And so what we're really doing with it, in the true sense of the term, is we are in fact polishing the surface to the high gloss that's often thought of when we talk about French polish. As easy as this process might appear, it is a little tricky and does take a little bit of getting used to. But my old teacher Les used to say it is the final test of a French polisher's craft, is the spirit or not. So that's pretty good. So I think we might go straight up and down now, just for a minute or two. Remove any swell marks that should be in the surface. There really shouldn't be any at this stage, but one never knows. And that is about it. So now the guitar should be put aside for 3 days to let that harden, because the surface is now very tender. In 3 days' time we can put the bridge on and the job's done.